Hi, I'm George Garland. This is Serial Latin America. The events endured by a group of about 100 college students on the night of September 26, 2014, in Guerrero, Mexico, are under high speculation. These 100 students were young men attending the rural school Raul Isidro Burgos Teachers College in the town of Ayusnepa. They were teachers training to travel to the most impoverished and rundown communities in Mexico. Most of these young men were raised in poor families and were studying at Burgos because their families could not afford to have them attend school anywhere else. These students were traveling on buses in the city of Iguala to raise money to support their journeys when they were attacked by local police officers on the night of September 26th. It still remains unclear today whether the missing 43 students after the incident are alive or dead. According to the Attorney General at the time, Jesus Murillo Caram, the students were murdered. In a statement on January 27, 2015, the Attorney General said, "These and other elements we found during the investigation allowed us to carry out and analyze about the logistics of the case, and without a doubt, we can conclude that the students at the Teachers College were abducted, killed, burned, and thrown into the San Juan River, in that order." After hearing this statement, there is one question on the minds of many. Where are the bodies? Some claim they were cremated, while others still have hope that they are indeed still alive. Later, this statement became known as the historic lie, and many demanded a new and deeper, more thorough investigation. This is a case that remains open as the questions surrounding the investigation increase. As I sit and examine the outrage expressed by many through protests, I wonder how conditions of Mexico affected this. Did the state of Mexico society allow this to happen? When looking at Latin America as a whole, it is clear that the effects of globalization have had a negative impact on the communities. The current state of Mexico didn't completely develop internally. In fact, it is strongly impacted by globalization in the region of Latin America. What is globalization exactly? It's exactly how it sounds. The effects on an area that come from a foreign intervention and involvement. In today's day and age, globalization is inevitable, with all the new efficiencies and benefits that come with it. However, what many people don't see are the power struggles and fights and detriments that come with foreign involvement. So, I'm going to take you all around Latin America to show you just how globalization has taken its toll on the land and made a statement right here in Iguala, Mexico. I'm going to take you into the lands of El Salvador, Cuba, Colombia, and Venezuela to see how globalization that was also seen in Mexico has affected their economies and civic stability. Today, I am in El Salvador. In El Salvador, civil war raged for almost 2 decades, where thousands of civilians were killed. This problem wasn't just domestic, it was foreign as well. The Americans worked with the El Salvadoran right-wing junta to get rid of the guerrillas and end, of course, communism. The peace treaty may have stopped the war in 1992, but civic instability lives on. During the 80s and 90s, gang members were being deported back to war-torn countries like El Salvador. They used the destruction and fragility of the people to advertise their cause and recruit more members. As the government continued to be inactive, the gangs seized the opportunities to thrive. Today, these gangs have major control over the government. I am here with journalist Oscar Martinez from elfaro.net, who explored the relationship between the government and these powerful gangs earlier this decade.
We learned that the authorities had transferred the top leaders of the two gangs from the maximum security prison in Zacatecoluca to lower security centers where, among other things, it is not uncommon for prisoners to have cell phones.
And what did the government do?
The government said nothing, and then it denied it. General Manuja Paez acknowledged to elfaro.net that the truce between the two gangs had been orchestrated in his office, and that the president was fully aware of it.
And then what happened?
In May of 2013, the Constitutional Chamber of El Salvador Supreme Court of Justice removed General Mungia Paez from his position as government minister. Soon after, the number of murders began increasing again. The gangs, upon seeing the government godfather of their pact removed from his post, demonstrated their power and left their response in blood. On one day in July, 27 people in different parts of the country were murdered in 24 hours.
Salvadorans are constantly living in fear because of these powerful gangs. Their government has been manipulated and weakened. This mysterious rise to power could be connected to the rise of gangs during the Civil War. These gangs are looking to spread their power and gain control of Central America. It is not just about El Salvador anymore. Globalization is in full force again. Today, I'm visiting Cuba. Cuba under Raul Castro has entered a new period of economic, social, and political transformation. Reforms instituted within the past few years have brought the expansion of private sector's entrepreneurial activity, including lifting restrictions on the sales of residential real estate, automobiles, and electronic goods, stating that it was time for the gradual transfer of key roles to new generations. President Raul Castro announced that he will retire by 2018 and named his possible successor a man who was not even born at the time of the Cuban Revolution. The Cuban government has been accused of numerous human rights abuses, including torture, arbitrary imprisonment, unfair trials, and extrajudicial executions. Human Rights Watch has stated that the government represses nearly all forms of political dissent and that Cubans are semantically denied basic human rights to free expression, association, assembly, privacy, movement, and due process of law. In July 2010, the unofficial Cuban Human Rights Commission said there were 167 political prisoners in Cuba, a fall from 201 at the start of the year. The head of the commission stated that long prison sentences were being replaced by harassment and intimidation. What we see here is civic instability. The tumultuous history of Cuba has left the country in a state of fragility. It is not as advanced as other nations in Latin America's region, all because of its past affairs. Maybe if it weren't for the desire to inhibit communist habits or get involved in relationships with the USSR, Cuba's government would be more stable than it truly is. Today, I am in Colombia, examining the effects of globalization on their economy. Colombia's main issue? Cocaine. Colombia is an illicit producer of coca, opium, poppy, and cannabis, the world's leading cocoa cultivator with 83,000 hectares in coca cultivations, producing a potential of 195 mt of pure cocaine. The world's largest producer of cocoa derivative. Colombia supplies cocaine to nearly all of the US markets and great majority of the international drug markets. Globalization has played a massive role in the increase in the production. This is because foreign demands show an extreme interest and desire for the product. This is a detriment for Colombian society and creates a bad economy and instability. Right now, I'm standing here with a local cocoa farmer to get his insight on what is currently happening in Colombia. Do you believe what you're doing here is right?
I work to feed my family. That is all that matters to me.
Are you aware that what you are doing here is negatively affecting the whole world and deteriorating your own country?
Colombia is a proud country. These cocoa farms provide jobs and have saved our people. We understand that cocaine is bad, but how do you let your family starve?
Thank you so much for your time. This interview shocked me for a number of reasons. This farmer believed that it did not matter what was right, all that mattered was whether the people of Colombia were happy. The Colombian government efforts to reduce the influence of drug-related criminal organizations is one of the origins of Colombian conflict. An ongoing low-intensity war among rival narco-parliamentary groups, guerrillas, and drug cartels fighting each other to increase their influence, and against the Colombian government that struggles to stop them. This may bring economic relief, but it has truly taken a toll on the entire global economy. Money is being spent, concentrated, and borrowed for a practice that causes more issue than it does benefit. Cocaine has caused so much internal conflict within Colombia and is the root of all of this is globalization. The question to ask is if Colombia had never been globalized, would the cocaine industry have grown so much? Today, in Mexico, I'm at a protest where men and women are holding up signs of the faces of the missing students. There is fear and sadness and anger all over. They are screaming, Hasta encontrarlos, which means until they are found. The fathers, mothers, siblings, friends, and supporters are all here to seek justice. This is not the end of our journey in Latin America. In fact, it is just the beginning. In today's society in Mexico, many are feeling the effects of globalization's impact on Latin American communities. After spending some time here in Mexico City, it is clear that Mexico today is experiencing the distress that comes with civic instability and an uncompromising economy. One of the survivors of the attack, Neri de la Cruz, agreed to sit down with me earlier today to discuss the inside perspective on the case. Neri has truly been through it all, and I'm grateful that he has agreed to sit down and speak with me. Neri fortunately escaped the gunman who had killed his fellow peers and friends. Here's a look at our interview from earlier this morning. So, Neri, thank you for sitting down with me to discuss this case. How did it feel to be in Iguala that day?
That night, being out on the streets of Iguala was like a death sentence.
What happened after you heard the shots?
When I heard the shots, the first thing I did was look back to make sure my fellow students were doing okay. I saw one of them was shot in the head. He turned his face and fell to the ground. At that moment, we panicked.
When looking back, what images stand out to you the most?
From the steps, we saw all the bloodstains and blood all over the aisles.
The unsettling events in Mexico mirrors the events in Latin America due to globalization. The corruption and lack of civic stability that is seen in El Salvador is similar to the instability experienced today in Mexico. Globalization is negatively impacting Mexico's economy the same way today as it is in Colombia. The crime problem in Colombia surrounding cocaine reflects the issues that Mexico faces regarding globalization's pressure on Mexico's illegal drug industry. The impacts of globalization's effect in Cuba also mirror the current fragility of Mexico. The society that is in place in Mexico creates a community that is allowed for the events in Iguala, Mexico to happen. Regarding what happened to the missing students, what is to blame for this case? The events in Latin America show that the root of the problems in Mexico is due to globalization. I'm George Garland. Thank you for listening to Serial Latin America.